What do we do then?
No.
Put an Iron Man doll.
Get two of
That'd be
them.
funny. Let's do it.
That's a sick one.
Guys, it's been a minute since we've sat down.
Write that down.
I know. I'm shaking off the rust, dude.
I'm having a really hard time getting back into it.
Back in the saddle again.
Because we're back in cast.
Is this supposed to be Iron Man? Oh, Back in Black. Neither of you have ever heard the song Back in Black before in your whole Back in Black.
That's how it goes. But sing back in cast, and that'll be our new bumper music. We'll do the guitars. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Back in cast.
Hello and welcome to Two Chunks and a Hunk, our movie podcast where we give pumps and dumps. I'm Jordan Wonders, and as always, I'm your chunk.
I'm Doge, and this week, Tony Stark built me in a cave with a box of chunks.
I'm David Blease, and I'm your hunk.
Gosh. Oh, well, this week we're talking about Iron Man.
It's been a while. I wasn't sure if we were going to do that again.
Yeah, well, we're just trying to feel the leather beneath our cheeks, if you will. We're getting back in that saddle. Our chunks, our butt chunks. We're really trying to just get the warm leather under those butt chunks once more.
Oh gosh.
But I can think of no better way to start 2018
yes.
or to start our Marvel MCU Infinity Countdown than by tossing it over to Doge for a synopsis.
I see that toss. I receive that toss. This week, we are talking about Iron Man. In this film, we open, Tony Stark is riding in the fun Humvee, and generally just kind of enjoying being a celebrity.
Yeah.
He's in Afghanistan to do a weapons demonstration when suddenly there is what is that? What is like a roadside bomb?
It's a boom.
A boom. There's a big boom.
Big
the car
boom.
in front of him
Cannot
goes,
stress how big this boom is.
big, hot, orange, smoky boom in front of him. And the car, the motor parade is attacked. Tony is taken prisoner by a terrorist group known as the Ten Rings, a sector of the Ten Rings. And he is hooked up to an electromagnet that is keeping him alive by sucking the shrapnel away from his heart. Yeah. They order him to build a missile that he just demonstrated to the U.S. government.
The Jericho
missile. They order him to build a Jericho missile. And he says, okay, here's what the parts I need. Except he doesn't build a missile. He builds a robot suit. A man made of iron with which he breaks out of their captivity.
Yeah, and I know what you're thinking. How can we watch a movie in which the main character is a fibber right off the bat? But his fib was a good fib. It was to build a suit instead of a missile.
I forgot what fib meant for a second, and I was like, what are you talking about? So he escapes captivity with his new magic iron suit, comes back to the States and says that his company, Stark Industries, is officially stopping all weapons production, which is what they've done up to this point.
Because he realizes that.
Because he realizes
they're
that
being used for evil.
Yep.
Exactly. That somebody is dealing under the table and his weapons are falling into the hands of the people that are using them to attack the people that he's trying to protect.
Yep.
Well said.
And so
Nicely done.
the board of Stark Industries attempts to completely shut Tony out through a series of very entertaining hijinks and shenanigans. Tony discovers that his surrogate father figure and mentor Obadiah Stane, exactly, who talks apparently like Andre the Giant, is apparently the guy dealing under the table to the terrorists, and he is selling them the weapons that Tony is creating. And so Tony says, no, don't want that to be happening, and so he decides to use his new iron suit technology to fight his mentor, who is using his old iron suit technology, but made bigger.
Much bigger. Cannot stress how big this Iron Man suit is.
And the way that I described it sounds very dumb. And I assure you that could not be farther from the truth. It is among the most entertaining things that I've seen in a very long time. That fight between Iron Man and Ironmonger at the end of this movie is awesome. Iron Man obviously defeats Ironmonger.
Yep.
He is presented with a cover story from a special agent who's kind of been in the shadows of this whole movie. At the end, he reveals himself to be Phil Coulson, who is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., an organization that will become very obviously important to us as we continue with our Infinity Countdown.
Yep.
He's presented a cover story by Phil Coulson to describe what has happened and why there were two giant robots fighting. So he goes to the press conference. He's about to deliver this cover story and say, Iron Man is my bodyguard. And then he doesn't do that. And he says to the crowd of reporters and people from the press, I am Iron Man. And then
He sure does.
We end the movie with this.
That's Back in Black.
Iron Man. Yeah, that's how the movie ends. And then it's a Marvel movie, so we got after credit scenes
Post-creds.
But at this time, we don't know
We
that.
had no idea.
Yeah.
And like an idiot, when I watched this the other day, I completely forgot about this and turned it off. There's a scene after the credits wherein Nicholas Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D., comes into Tony's penthouse, I guess, or wherever he's.
It's a full-blown house.
It's his home. Comes into his home and gives him a manila folder marked Avengers Initiative.
Says you thought you were the only one.
Yep.
What, are you crazy or something? What, are you out of your mind?
I distinctly remember 10 years ago, which is crazy, 10 years ago when I saw that in the theater, and Nick Fury hands him that folder. My first thought was, there is no way they're going to do that. That is crazy. That would be too cool.
And now here we are.
My first thought was, is Nick Fury black? Did I miss that?
Ultimate Universe. So,
However, now
the Ultimate
everywhere
Universe,
Nick Fury is
Yeah.
black.
well,
which I
here's
love.
the deal. The Ultimate Universe, Nick Fury is black. The Ultimate Universe was an imprint of Marvel Comics that was started in the early 2000s as a way to more easily on-ramp people into Marvel Comics and their properties. For people who didn't want to have to worry about 50 years of continuity, they started fresh and they launched Spider-Man and X-Men and all these, their definitive heroes. They launched new stories with them and rebooted them back to their younger selves. That's
great.
In that universe, Nick Fury is black. When the universe, so this is really comic booky, and I'm sorry if this isn't interesting to any of you, but I'm really interested by
I'm
it.
excited. Let's do it.
Let's hit it.
In 2015,
I'm out.
Secret Wars was an event that happened, basically a war across the multiverse. So affected the 616, the main continuity. That's the name of the main continuity, the 616. And it affected the Ultimate Universe. Those universes were merged. And then we learned that Black Nick Fury is White Nick Fury Sr.'s son. He's Nick Fury Jr., and the universes were merged. And then Nick Fury Sr. died, and Nick Fury Jr. stepped into the role previously held by Nick Fury Sr. as head of S.H.I.E.L.D.
And
Interesting.
He was Asian at the end.
Yes. No, it's very very, very comic booky.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons I don't read comics. I wait for graphic novels to come out because I can read a story in
Talking about like the trade
completely
paperbacks,
seclusion.
You don't want to have to keep up with issue to issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And realize, wait, what happened last time?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
go buy it. So I just wait for it to come
It's
out. in a graphic
daunting.
novel.
And I have a lot of thoughts about the comic industry and how the pricing structure and release structure needs to change if they're going to keep readers on the hook. But that's not what this podcast is about.
We're talking about the movie
We're
Iron
talking
Man.
about the movie Iron Man,
let's
which
go.
we have yet to do.
Let's
10
go.
minutes into our show.
Let's start at the beginning of Iron Man. It opens up with the desert scene.
Yes.
And it's an interesting timeline because it is basically in the middle of a chronological story, or I guess it's toward the end of a chronological story where he's driving, and this is after he's launched the Jericho missile, but we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah.
And he's talking with the people. We see the explosion, and then we see him caught by the terrorists, and it backs up and says like 24 hours later.
What you're looking for is it starts in media res.
Meteor res?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
Latin, I
he's in
believe.
the middle of the action, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it backs up, and we see we kind of get a introduction into Tony Stark.
Yeah.
A really quick introduction as far as
Yeah.
his father, this empire he built, then passed it down to his son, but who wasn't old enough. So Obadiah stepped in to.
I think it's really well done, by the way.
It's a really it makes sense.
Yeah.
it wasn't.
I don't think it's necessary. I like it.
Yeah.
I enjoy it. It's not something that it's not an editing decision or a framing decision that I would have necessarily made.
Do you mean starting in the middle like that?
Starting in the middle
Okay,
like
I thought
that.
you meant
Yeah, yeah.
the description of...
No. I think
Tony.
like were it up to me, I think the story might have flowed a little better, been a little less confusing on first watch if it was in chronological order.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they chose to
with you.
go for dramatic irony which is where the audience knows something bad is going to happen, and the audience has more information than the characters, rather than true irony.
Right.
Yeah. I liked that.
I think it worked well.
Yeah, and I do think that one scene though where we do get like the brief introduction of Tony Stark. It did remind me like, oh, this is the first movie.
Yeah,
like they have to set this history up, and they can't spend a lot of time on it if they want to get to the story.
Well, and I think there's something to be said for us watching Tony frolicking in a casino or spending time with that reporter, and kind of like you were saying. Just we know how worthless everything that he's spending his time on is.
Yeah.
And so I think there's something to
like pumping that or dumping that.
No, I'm pumping that. I think it's good that we're watching and going, oh, you're about to find out how little this all matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and something I think that happens at the very beginning of this movie is something that I think continues to happen throughout the entire movie, and really the tone for Iron Man is this came out the same year as Dark Knight.
Yep.
And
no, this is 2008. Dark Knight was 2009.
2009.
I don't think so.
Regardless, Batman Begins came out.
Right.
Yeah.
And,
06.
And Dark Knight was on its way, and Spider-Man had already come out. So like we had some good superhero
This is 1 year
movies.
after Spider-Man 3.
We've had some good superhero movies at that point, but I think this struck a balance that what hadn't been struck before, which was a real, I don't know what like a real not down to earth. I'm blanking on
realistic. Is that what you're looking
realistic, but gritty. And real superhero, but also has the fun comic book feel of like a Spider-Man.
I think the majority of the credit for that, because I totally agree. That's one of the notes that I made while I was watching. Is like, wow, the tonal balance that they strike between the drama and the comedy is very, very nice.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that good balance is owed to the dialogue.
Yeah.
The dialogue feels very real, very moment to moment. And there's actually a rumor.
Oh, no, it's not a rumor. It's been confirmed.
Really? That much of Iron Man was shot with no script. Like
intentionally, though.
Yeah. Which is why the dialogue feels so like incidental. You know what I mean? Like it feels like the characters are making it up as they go, which all dialogue should feel like that. But in this case, the actors are literally making up the words.
Only Robert Downey Jr. can do that.
Seriously.
Only Robert Downey Jr.
Well, and that's why he brings so much to the table as Iron Man, as Tony, as just a player in the Marvel universe, because he brings such a unique energy, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, he's pretty much playing himself.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they've even done like side by side shots of Tony Stark's lines and Robert Downey Jr. in meetings, and he'll say the exact. He'll be like, "Yes, dear," and you're like, "That's freaking Robert Downey Jr."
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go ahead and give my super pump to this movie, which is Robert Downey Jr.
David. My super bump is also Robert Downey Jr.
Come on, Doge!
Robert Downey Jr. playing himself.
Jordan's so stupid.
I'll pump him for sure.
So tell me more about why you hate Robert Downey Jr.
Mostly that he's not me.
Yeah.
Yikes.
No, I think because it is a like obviously like of course Robert Jr. But honestly, if it wasn't for him, not the movie, not Jon Favreau, not the script, which now was kind of a lack thereof. If it wasn't for Robert Downey Jr., we would not have the MCU.
It is entirely fair to say that Robert Downey Jr. carries this movie and thus the majority of Phase 1 of the MCU on his shoulders.
And they realize that.
Well, I think you could argue that that's why a lot of, and I'm not against it, but a lot of Phase 2 was spent pushing like the narrative burden onto other characters that weren't
I feel like we're just now getting to the point in the MCU where it's not just the Iron Man movies. You know what I mean? Where we can truly say it's the Avengers movies. Like it's Tony's story, it's Steve's story, it's everybody's story.
Because Phase 1 was very Tony Stark heavy. Because they needed to be. But
and he was their guy too.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I love that Marvel, and now you can say Disney, they know that. They don't do what Sony does, which is like, oh, we got it. Like this is on us.
Yeah.
They know that Robert Downey Jr. was their like their cash cow, and he gets a percentage of the overall growth of the movies.
Oh, really?
He does.
Interesting.
Because they know it's like this was you.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Well, and there's no way that they could deny it at this point, honestly. Just how incredible he is. But I think we were still talking about the flashback, maybe
kind of the opening. Opening scenes.
The opening. I think they did a fantastic job showing Tony's character in that. And I think that Robert Downey Jr.'s acting in the moment when Yinsen dies.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Which, by the way, fantastic. I love Yinsen so much.
Yes, I
Yinsen
love
is a
that character.
definite pump for me.
I don't love his actual death scene where he's just like, and then gone.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of that exact moment. I watched it today and was like, oh, yikes.
The thing that stood out to me the most was as he's dying, Tony says something to the effect of like, "Thank you for saving me," or "You saved my life." And Yinsen goes, "Don't waste it."
Yep.
Yeah, don't.
And I looked at my wife when we were watching that. And I was like, "That is the reason that Tony does everything that he does." From
I completely
now on.
agree.
Anytime we watch him, it's because he is terrified that he might waste his life.
Well, and I believe Jensen comes back up in Civil War when he talks about I was in a cave.
Does he? I don't remember that line.
Man, I don't know if it was Civil War, but I believe
It's
he mentions
definitely
it again
somewhere else.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of those moments where there's a few moments in Tony Stark's arc, but a lot of characters where there's a moment where there's a turning point.
Yeah.
And they did such a great job at creating that turning point where we as the audience know he's going to be different after this.
Oh, yeah. Well, and I think one of the first times that you get that is when he does show back up for that like press meeting.
Yeah.
Where he says we're canceling our weapons division for now.
Yeah.
Until we can be more responsible and have some accountability there.
Yeah.
And I think that, I mean, we are supposed to gauge by the press's reaction and Obadiah Stane's reaction that is completely out of character for the Tony Stark that they knew before he was in the cave, which I don't think I ever realized. He said he was in the cave for 3 months.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't think I ever realized
It
that
definitely
until
doesn't
today.
feel like that long.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, I didn't know that.
But apparently he's in the cave for 3 months, which is insane.
Yeah.
So they were searching for him for 3 months?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Well, either searching for him or couldn't get to him.
That's one of those things that I think was hard for me because I'll tell you now, it was almost impossible for me to find a super dump. Like it's very hard to find a super dump in this movie. It's
Yeah,
something that
I
you
agree.
like hate.
I agree.
But I think one of the things that I could dump on is when he's coming out of the suit and he's like almost shedding the old suit. And he's just
in the
walking
desert. Yeah.
in the desert and the planes fly overhead. And it's like, that was lucky.
Yeah.
Like what does he have a tracker?
That's why part of me wonders if it's not that they couldn't find him, but that they couldn't get to him and that they've been monitoring the location
and
or
we know
something.
that they
it's
did a
Rhodes.
video. We know they did a video.
Yeah.
Rhodes gets off the helicopter immediately. So I've got to wonder, was Rhodes just canvassing that area looking for Tony?
Maybe, but either way, I'm totally with
big
you that
old
it feels
desert.
super duper convenient.
Yeah.
Like it's just like,
It
oh,
does.
there he is.
Honestly, and we'll get there. In the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there are a few things where you're like, well, that worked out nicely.
Yeah, I totally agree.
So I think that's one of those things in this movie where it was just like, well, that was perfect. But glad his suit turned back on when he fell from space.
That's one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie, though.
Great. But it worked out super nice.
It did.
It did. So Tony's back. They've canceled their weapons division.
Right.
Yeah.
And he immediately begins prep on the Mark II suit.
Right.
Which is the all silver suit where he first tests the flight.
It's
You
too
mentioned it a second
heavy,
ago.
is what he talks about too.
Yeah. It's because what does he say?
It's a different metal. It's like a
titanium.
gold.
It's a different metal.
Titanium gold alloy is what the Mark III and presumably 3 through whatever we're up to, like 40.
That's why he falls through the
47 now.
ceiling.
Yeah.
Well, and I love the look at Tony Stark's personality where he says, Jarvis says there are terabytes of calculations that we have to do before you could fly.
Yeah.
And he goes, Jarvis, sometimes you have to run before you can walk.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
love that.
Tony Stark.
Oh,
And-
100%.
And see,
I love
in that one
And
moment, we get a characterization of who he is as a person.
His mindset.
Yeah.
Well, and I think also even a little bit before that, when he's like chastising his robot arm, and he's just like, I swear, if you put the fire extinguisher on me again,
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you. What do you say? I'm gonna send you to a garage. Oh, I'm gonna donate you to
donate
the
you
City College.
Yeah, to a city college.
college.
It's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
funny.
Well, and he, Obadiah says, we have to get rid of this ready, shoot, aim
Yeah.
personality. And what a good characterization of Tony Stark, which they keep alluding to. Because one thing I think that this movie is that I didn't realize it was the first time I watched it was it's almost a coming of age movie.
Yeah.
it really
Because
is.
he's an adult, but he's really a kid.
Exactly
He's
like
a
a kid.
super smart, super
Yeah.
arrogant kid. And in this entire process of him going through crisis and being kidnapped, he's having to grow up.
Yeah.
And he even alludes to that, like, okay, but I am the company.
Yeah.
And I am maturing. And so the company has to.
Yep.
And so I
It's a new
love
direction
that.
for me. Responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved that.
Well, and that's kind of the thing with Obadiah is it's sort of a I think you mentioned that it's a father figure.
Yeah.
He's a stand-in father figure for Tony. And so,
well, and as we'll find out in Iron Man 2, Tony didn't see his dad much. Like Tony didn't have a great relationship with his father. And he says in this movie, I never got to tell dad goodbye.
Yeah. And so with Obadiah, that's why it's so hard for him. I think it can be easy to watch and say you had to know it was Obadiah, but like he trusted Obadiah.
Yeah.
And so that's what one of the many things that makes it tough, I think.
Gosh, Robert Downey Jr.'s reaction at the benefit whenever...
Dude, I love Let's Take a Picture.
Oh my gosh.
But you talking about when the reporter shows him the pictures?
No.
Oh, you talking about Let's Take a Picture?
Whenever Obadiah puts his arm around him and says, Tony, let's take a picture.
Oh
and that's
my
when he's like,
gosh.
it's
good.
me.
That's when you can see it's
I'm the
evil.
one selling the weapons.
You can tell he's evil and good at it.
Well, because I love... So I want to pump, not super pump, but I want to pump on Jeff Bridges as Obadiah Stane.
He is so good in
He
this.
disappears. And I can't say that for Jeff Bridges a lot. I feel like it's normally pretty easy to go, hey, it's Jeff Bridges.
Yeah, sure.
But he
That's a good
is
call.
gone
That's a good
in this
call.
I
movie.
think it's because he's bald.
Yeah, I think it is too.
That's what I say without the slick back hair.
I totally agree. I think it's because he's bald, but he is menacing at times as Obadiah and like just kind of heartless. That scene with him and Pepper in the office when he's just like, oh, is that today's paper? Do you think I could get
Flash
that?
drive?
Yeah.
That is the most intense scene of all time. I almost threw up in that scene.
Just like, oh,
When she comes in and I'm like, oh shoot. She's like screensaver and I'm like, computers can do that? Oh shoot.
oh my goodness. But I love that scene. I love the Let's Take a Picture, but I also love when the reporter that he slept with early in the movie, when she comes back and she's like, do you call this accountability, Mr. Stark? And she throws the pictures and he's like, where did you get these? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
And that's when he just starts to,
If you haven't watched
it's coming
recently,
after it.
it's pictures of Stark weapons. It's pictures of a Jericho missile in the hands of the Ten Rings terrorists.
Yeah. Well, we kind of skip forward. I want to back up, but it obviously goes throughout the whole movie. But the relationship between Tony Stark and Pepper Potts,
So good,
is so good,
so good.
I wholeheartedly, with all of my being, love the scene where Tony gets her to help him change the arc reactor in his chest. That is.
Which makes sure you don't pull the. Oh, what are you doing? I'm just going into cardiac arrest. That's okay.
See, here's what I will say though. I love Gwyneth Paltrow as Pepper Potts. I'm gonna do a slight dump on her performance in this movie. Really? For me, it just feels like you can tell she is struggling to keep up the entire time with people like Jeff Bridges. And I think later on, she totally kind of fits in comfortably and then is like, she keeps up very well. But in this movie, and I'm going to chalk it up to if that lack of script thing is true, I wonder if she just had a hard time operating off script. But to me, there were just times where I could tell like, oh, not so great.
She doesn't keep up, but there are few individuals on this planet
that could. I agree
with the amount of charisma that Robert Downey Jr. or Jeff Bridges possess.
But in early Pepper Potts, earlier on in the movie, it's actually interesting. So during his first test drive of the suit, I believe it's still with the silver suit, what later becomes War Machine's prototype. When he flies up and is covered in ice, and then they kind of talk about needing to freeze-proof the suit, and then when Pepper Potts gives him the glass case of the first reactor that he put in his chest,
proof that Tony Stark has a heart.
It's like these two. They almost set up two Chekhov gun scenarios that both fired. And so I don't know. I guess if you're not familiar with that, Chekhov gun is a narrative idea, element,
literary trope.
And the idea is if you're given a gun in Act 1, it needs to fire by Act 3. And so it's the idea that if something is set up important, it needs to realize its importance later on.
Both the
he needs the heart to survive.
The metal with the ice. That's
how he drops him.
That's the thing.
See, I love both of them. I get what you're saying because it can be chalked up to like, well, that worked out great, and I'm glad they showed us that. But they both work so well.
Oh no, I love. I'm not. I love it.
Like a Chekhov's gun done well. Is like those are great examples of that done well. This movie, although it had no script, scene to scene, the overall meta narrative is so tightly woven together. Like there is not a minute of wasted screen time. This is such a wonderfully paced movie.
Well, and back to your point on the dialogue feeling so real. I think that was what made the relationship between Stark and Pepper Potts so not only so incredible to watch, but felt so true. there's so much chemistry and sexual tension here that
dude, I love the
about
scene
break
near the end where she's like, "Oh, you mean the night that we danced together and you took me up on the roof and then forgot about me?" And then she's like, "Oh, got him."
He's like, "Oh, yep,
That's the one. That's the night."
I just love when they're in the beginning, because we don't see this side of Pepper Potts and Tony Stark anymore after Iron Man 1, maybe a little bit in 2, but where it's basically only a professional relationship, but you can tell they're trying to break through, and she's like, "Well, it is my birthday." He's like, "Really? Is it that again?" I knew that. And she's like, "Yep, same time every year." Did I get you something nice? He's like, oh yes,
good
Mr.
taste.
Yes, Mr. Stark. He's like, "Oh yeah, I did, didn't I?" And she's like, "Very good taste." Like I love that trying to break through that professional barrier.
I agree.
And I'm gonna pump on the scene where I think it's really just a quick line from Tony. I don't even necessarily remember the context of this line, but it's when he tells Pepper, "You're all I have."
Yep.
And the way that Robert Downey Jr. delivers that line, like at first seems jokingly, and you can tell, like for me, like he is so ridiculously good as Tony Stark. Like you can tell that when Tony says that, he's like a little joking and a little trying to deflect it, but really honestly trying to have one moment of human connection.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So John, a couple of things. One, Jon Favreau actually chose him to play Iron Man because of the similarities he already saw between the two characters. Specifically, the main thing he talked about is the quality that they share the most, in his opinion, is that the best and worst times of both of their lives have been wildly publicized.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so like for both Tony and for Robert Downey Jr., like the public, whether it was their business or not, has seen him at his highest and his lowest.
Wow.
And so that was like the biggest thing that he saw, was like a charming guy who just kind of got a bad rap for a while.
Yeah.
But then the other thing I was going to say,
deserved the bad rap.
oh no, he did. Yeah, he did. And I think you could argue that Tony
As
did
did
too.
Tony.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
But the scene you're talking about is when she's fixing his chest and she says, "Don't ask me to do that for you
You're
again."
right.
And then he says,
Right.
"You're all I have."
You're all I have.
And then she says, "You're all I have too, Tony."
Yeah. Yeah.
I love
Oh
it.
my gosh.
So
It's
great.
good.
Which again goes back to what Jensen said, which is, "Do you have family?" He says
Yeah.
no, and he says, "So you're a man with everything,
Who has nothing.
but nothing."
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is great.
Ugh.
So in a way, thanks Jensen, I guess, for the MCU. We appreciate it.
Jensen built the MCU.
He built the
MCU.
MCU in a cave with a box of scraps.
I'm gonna let's talk about a certain plot point that I'm gonna give my super dump to.
Okay.
And that is because I mean it can seem
Wait,
small.
is your super dump not the helicopters?
the birds?
What?
What?
That
birds.
was a Suicide Squad joke.
Helos is what
helos.
you meant.
or the birds.
They call them birds and helos.
Wait,
in that
really?
Movie. Yeah. and
They,
that
they
very-
jacked up
I
birds.
think I
That very bad,
might
bad
have
movie.
blocked out that movie.
Are you? I thought your
helicopter.
super dump was whenever they rescue Tony in the desert.
No, that was a dump.
I see.
My super dump is Shield, not the
No, go. Keep going.
not the fact that Shield's in the movie or that they come in, but the fact that they call themselves the strategic homeland. And it's like nobody
Nobody wrote it down
put that
on paper
together
and was like,
wait a
"Shh."
second.
Well, and then even worse, later on in the movies, they basically retcon that out completely because, and you reminded me of this, Peggy Carter specifically names the organization S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that is after World War I, and I'm gonna rush to the defense of Agent Phil Coulson. I don't know that he was telling the 100% truth.
No, you
to
can't
Tony
do that.
Stark's
he was totally like
random
"Oh, it's a
assistant
long
that he's
name."
never met.
No, so
I will pump on Coulson though. Just
Coulson's
Yeah,
great.
he's
But
so
continue.
good.
here's what I think they should have done. I don't even know the whole acronym. Strategic
Homeland Intervention Enforcement Logistics
Division.
I think they should have had like the national, and so like one letter was off. It wasn't the strategic homeland. It was like the strategic
Hield.
national. So
Sheened.
it seemed off, and at the very end, he was like, "Actually, it's a strategic homeland.
Yeah,
just
that
call
would
it
work.
Shield."
Snealed.
So they just call it Schneal.
Agents of S.N.I.E.L.D. this fall on ABC.
Captain America and his Sneal.
But you know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Yeah.
Where they changed it at the end, and it makes Shield because him just doing a incredibly long acronym and then pretending like no one ever knows it was Shield.
No one ever wrote it on a whiteboard and was like, "Guys,
I will say,
I think I solved the problem. It's dope.
I will say that reveal at the end which is, by the way, the culmination of a very well executed 3-beat. That reveal at the end did throw 2008 me for a loop.
Oh, me too.
The fact that it was S.H.I.E.L.D. Oh, yeah, yeah.
S.H.I.E.L.D., yeah,
Because not many people are like, wait, strategic?
Yeah.
Like, I
Say
get it.
Rewind it.
Guys, this movie is such a great example of several very awesome narrative tropes that show up later in the MCU. That is a 3-beat. So a 3-beat is a sequence of one event that happens 3 times over the course of a story. And they always follow this pattern. They establish, they reinforce, and then they subvert. So they establish Phil Coulson in his first interaction where he says, we're the, and then gives a long name. In his second interaction, he reinforces that and does the same thing again. And in the third one, the audience is keyed to expect that, and then they subvert it and give you the name S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And it's so well done.
Yeah. It's great watching the movie, the second watch. You're like, wait, what? So that, for me, that's my super dump.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. Guys, I have to come up with a super dump for this very good
Just
movie.
keep trucking, you know what I'm saying?
Interestingly enough, though, in the first episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., he says to one of the new guys coming in, like, do you know what the strategic homeland, environment, everything stands for, or like stands for in this world? And he goes, yeah, someone really wanted our initials to be S.H.I.E.L.D.
And they did. It was Peggy Carter.
My new super dump for this movie is that David clearly watches the television show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Funny enough, I don't. I stopped at the first episode.
Thank goodness.
I watched the first season.
I've been told it gets better. And
Yeah, but that's what everybody says about bad shows.
it's true, but I've also been told first season's great. So now I just don't listen to people.
It feels too much to me like the CW, like Arrow and
like Flash.
Just it's kind of soap opera with superpowers. Which if that's your thing, go for
Do
it.
it, man.
More power to you.
It's just
love
not my
Flash.
thing.
It's just I'm not into that.
No, we don't.
Yep.
I want to pump on a scene that I want to move on to, which is, it's not my super pump, but it's my pump. One of them, when he first starts going and taking out the weapons caches.
In Gomera.
Yeah.
Which is where Jensen is from.
Yeah.
I didn't catch that until this watch.
Yep.
That the reason he responds that way is because that's Jensen's hometown and that's Jensen's people.
Yep. And he just,
That scene is so cool.
And
rolls it out.
And it's so like typical now and almost overplayed that you can look at it probably like our 5th watch and be like, oh yeah, that scene. But where he shoots the mini missile and then nothing happens and he walks away and it explodes is
so
one of the
good.
greatest scenes in the movie as far as just action.
Well,
and he dodges that.
I
first
know we
one.
love to make fun of the superhero landing, but when he lands that first time and his
so
suit
cool.
sounds like it weighs 1.3 billion tons, just gook.
It's so cool.
I get real hype every time.
They all have guns to the hostages' heads.
yeah, dude,
And you're like, crap, how's he going to do this?
Oh, my
And it's just like
goodness.
locks targets and then and they just all die. I was like,
That's one of those
That's
moments
it.
where my reaction was only, like just amped.
my biggest out loud reaction to this movie was when the girl from Brown, Mrs. Brown, that he spends time with at the beginning, says, "You must be the famous Mrs. Potts. He still has you doing his laundry." And she
Yeah,
goes,
dude.
I do everything Mr. Stark tells me to do. I occasionally take out the trash. I went
this way.
shoot, Potts.
She got words.
That was my biggest reaction to the movie. Not the blow up, not the fight scene when she just
You were just like,
roasted.
dang, girl.
I was like,
Dude.
oh shoot.
I will say though, watching this movie, particularly in regards to those action scenes and the big action set pieces that are in this one, I had forgotten how like absolutely definitely MCU, but broader than that, how genre defining this movie is. Because like the Iron Man is the template for every superhero movie post Iron Man.
Yeah.
With the exception of The Dark Knight Rises.
Right.
Every superhero movie post then has tried to be Iron Man. And in terms of just the visual feel and like the way that the action flows and is structured.
Yeah.
This movie, like, I would argue that this movie and Spider-Man 2 4 years prior are really the foundational building blocks upon which all, 17 by the time Infinity War comes out, 17 remaining MCU movies are built
Well, I
on.
think Spider-Man 2, Iron Man, and Rise of the Silver Surfer. Fantastic Four.
Yeah, David, we do know that's your favorite movie.
Shut
And
up.
it's-
I mean, he went through a freaking building.
Can we call this episode of the podcast David Blees and the Rise of the Silver Sweater?
Please.
Oh, nice.
Oh, shoot! Pepper Potts. That was a roast.
I am crying.
Guys,
I am crying.
It was a pot roast.
No.
Yeah.
Nice.
Dude, I'm going to laugh at that hard later when I listen.
But now I know.
No, I know. It's too real.
So he goes, he takes out the weapon caches. What happens next, David?
After after that, that's when we really we know that Obadiah is bad, but pretty soon after that, we see him come back to Tony Stark's house.
Yeah, that's when he brings pizza, right?
Yeah, no, that's when
Is it later?
Yeah, that's later.
It's
that was
amazing
earlier.
how out of order
that was
this
earlier.
movie is in my mind.
Pizza is way earlier.
But he
than
comes
that.
back.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And you
He's
see
still
Tony
building the
Stark
suit.
sit down on the couch and then freeze, and Obadiah is behind him and takes the things out of his ear.
Oh, yeah.
But by going here, you have skipped arguably one of the best lines of dialogue in the entire movie.
Hit me with it.
Because before that, he's getting on to his scientist or his engineer for not being able to shrink down the arc reactor, which is when he delivers the line, Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
Yeah.
And it's just the longest pause. And I remember saying that about everything I saw for a year after I watched that movie.
And such a great line after that. I'm not Tony Stark.
Yeah.
Where you realize
Because nobody is except for him, you know?
he could have said, I'm not Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, he really could
The
have.
same thing, exactly. I'm glad that you brought up the paralysis earbuds.
Yeah.
Because that is going to be my super dump.
Okay, fair.
Because I feel as though in a movie where everything is set up and paid off so well, and it's such a deft hand that's set all these things into motion.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a way they could have set that up a little bit better. Because
Like maybe explosions too loud or something.
it feels very much like Jeff Bridges has this. I mean, it kind of does feel like the mysterious third act new superpower trope that we talked about in our DC movies, where it's just like, oh, he has this exact one thing he needs to get out of this situation.
Yeah.
And we've never seen him have anything similar to that before.
Here's what I'll say, and you dump away. I'm going to disagree with you because they are a weapons manufacturer, and I feel as though that is totally something I could see a semi-futuristic weapons manufacturer having.
I totally agree. And it's not that I don't see him having.
It was just never addressed.
It came out of nowhere for me.
I get that.
Even I think a line of him on the beginning, like on the phone, like talking, because he said the Department of Defense didn't buy that prototype from them. So just talking with the
Our
Department
intro
of Defense.
scene with him,
Yeah. It's just like, what do you mean you don't want to buy the sonic weapon? Do you understand what it does? It paralyzes. Click, hang up the phone.
Yeah.
3 Chekhovs.
I think
I know. 3 Chekhov's a magnificent 3 beat. This movie is, if you're into that kind of thing, like about narrative craft, this movie is a
pretty well
treasure
done.
trove
Yeah.
of awesome things.
But I think with the ear power that is displayed.
That's what we're calling our podcast.
And by the way, it is hefty ear power.
Welcome to Ear Power, your favorite superhero podcast.
I think it is one of the most scary things to imagine.
Oh my gosh.
15 minutes.
Not being able to move and know that someone's going to do something you can't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that to a hero. I think that is one of the most tension building things that you can
absolutely.
do is you're going to sit here and watch. It's like Dark Knight Rises. Like you're going to sit in this prison cell and you're going to watch Gotham burn. Like there's something so incredible that happens in a character when they're not able to do what only they can do.
Well, and that's why Iron Man goes full Rage Against the Machine in that third act. Right after that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it goes on a literal rage
against an actual machine. But in that third act, because he threatened Pepper, he threatened everything. And so that's why
he threatened
just...
Pepper, and Tony realizes that's the only thing that he has.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, guys, I love this movie.
No,
so
it's
much.
super well done.
Yeah.
But final fight scene, I guess we should talk about.
It's awesome. I don't know what to say about that. I have no critique of that final fight scene. It's wonderful.
I'm gonna sucker punch my microphone and we can get right back to it.
Please.
I do love, we talked about it where it came back, but the line where he said like, what have you figured out about?
Yeah, did you fix the icing problem?
Yeah,
Yep.
the
He's like, what
irons
icing
that
problem?
you're using.
He
What-
goes, should have thought of it. Or you should look into it. And then just like bops, he head bops him.
Yep,
and then
love
that's
it.
when he falls. I will say the final fight, it didn't, but it bordered on at the beginning being to punch you fly this way, punch you fly this way.
Yeah.
And then quickly turned into Ironmonger just destroying Iron Man, which I was very happy about.
Well, I think like all of these superhero movies, just watching people punch with super strength is never super entertaining, or maybe is for a second. but you have to get down to the relational conflict that's happening while the fighting's happening, or you don't care about it. And they did a really good job where he opens up his entire like body.
Yeah.
And he's like, listen, Tony.
How do his arms and legs move?
I was thinking about that because his arm is like 8 feet out to his left.
Are like fully extended, but his hands probably reach his suit's shoulders.
Yeah.
So like, is it like
he's in jelly,
neurally hooked up to him?
I'm thinking it's like a giant puppet where he's like
he's holding marionette strings,
inside out marionette,
just exactly marionette strings.
Iron Marionette.
Coming this fall. But I agree. I think especially on the rooftop when Iron Man is just crawling on him instead of flying and shooting and punching.
Yeah.
And when he's hiding from him and Ironmonger's like grabbing corners and coming around almost like the ogre or the cave troll in Fellowship of the Ring, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the vibe it gave me, was just that like, where'd you go? Like that kind of thing. But it worked. Especially showing how vulnerable Tony knew that he was in that moment. He had taken off his glove like an idiot. And I'm going to dump on that, by the way, that he just decided to remove his suit on the roof of the building.
Fight.
No,
it's
you can't. You can't just defend everything because you like the movie, though.
Watch me. Listen to this podcast later and listen to me do it.
It is so dumb that he lands on the roof and is just like, that was a good one, right? Time to throw in the towel.
I love that moment where he goes to shoot the repulsor beam at him and he has no... And
it's a great moment. And I'm not saying I wish it wasn't in the movie. Just as Tony Stark, I feel like it was a dumb move to just be like, let me strip the suit off on this rooftop.
We do get the thing that historically Spider-Man movies have been the worst about, where it's the final fight, so we have to unmask both of our heroes so we can watch our actors act. Which I understand. Robert Downey Jr. was paid a lot more money than the shell of an Iron Man helmet was for this movie. I do love that Marvel has begun to move away from that. And we're allowed to have our actors emoting inside their superhero costumes rather than having to always take their masks off for the final
Captain America's mask off.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because you just reminded me, this was almost my super pump, but is now just a regular pump. Speaking of actors who have no face, I want to pump on Jarvis and Paul Bettany, who plays Jarvis, because I realized today that other than Robert Downey Jr., Paul Bettany has been in the most MCU movies.
Yeah, he has.
As Jarvis.
Because he's been in every single one that Robert Downey Jr. has been in.
And
except for Homecoming.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But he's Vision at that point.
But he's not in that movie.
He's not in the movie. Though.
But I love Paul Bettany, first of all, just as an actor. But I think his voice is so perfect as Jarvis. I think he's fantastic as Vision later on. Paul Bettany is awesome, and this movie brought him into my life as Jarvis. And for that, I say thank you, Jon Favreau.
Yep. I will say, while we're on that final fight, there are some moments where the Ironmonger CGI doesn't quite hold up.
I'm with you.
It does look a bit like, do you guys remember when The Force Awakens came out and there was that like iPad app that you could like film a scene and then have BB-8 roll across the scene and then have like a TIE fighter come and shoot an explosion.
Yes.
Sometimes,
wait, what app?
particularly when Ironmonger is like climbing out of the roof of the factory, it looks very bad and is so...
In just the one hand that comes up and lands on top of the cookie jar.
It can be forgiven because it's 2008, but it was only 1 year prior to Avatar.
Yeah.
So it can be forgiven, but never forgotten.
Here we go again. Always bringing the best, most high grossing movie in the world.
I mean, if Avatar can do it, surely this tiny little movie, first movie from a small new studio can do it.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
And something I think to pump on is at the end of the movie when they bring in the Avengers concept, I think Jon Favreau was saying this would be awesome if we could do this.
I agree.
Yeah, they had no plans.
He wasn't saying, oh, we are planning out until 2032. And you're like, okay.
No way.
Which I think is what universes should do, because they didn't put Captain America in this movie and Hulk in this movie.
Yep.
And I know that I'm just beating up on DC right now because there's no other comparison.
Well, it's just because it's bad.
However, I think a lot of movies did this, like in Amazing Spider-Man 2, when they introduced this the Sinister Six. All these movies are trying to, like, first movie out of the gate set up for 15 years down the road without making the good movie first. And I'm okay with doing odes or cameos in first movies, but only as like, wouldn't this be great?
Yeah.
And now it's up to you, the fans, to support and battle with us.
Yeah.
Rather than, you can't do anything. We're a huge studio with a ton of money, and we're just going to make these movies forever.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about this 2 episodes from now, but Iron Man 2 actually was, I think, the only time the MCU really, really dabbled in that kind of universe building at the expense of story.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's easily the worst of the MCU.
And I think also, and we'll get there, I think obviously they were so tied to, we have to keep Robert Downey Jr. in here.
Yeah.
And it wasn't the time for Iron Man 2.
Yeah.
It was like Iron Man 1, Hulk, which was okay.
And then Iron Man 2.
Yeah, it was like right off the bat. And then they did the same
movie.
thing with Iron Man 3. They're like right after
Avengers.
he was the first, not session 2,
Phase 2.
Phase 2. It was Iron Man 3. So it's like, we got to keep him at the forefront. And I think
There's a reason we
like
haven't had a solo Iron Man film since Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
And I think Robert Downey Jr. has something to do with that.
I think so too. I hope so.
Yeah.
When we get to Age of Ultron, we'll talk about how that's essentially a solo Iron Man film.
Yeah, basically.
It's Iron Man and Friends in the same way that Civil War is Captain America and Friends.
Right.
But that's several weeks away.
Whatever.
It's a trailer for upcoming content on this podcast.
But I agree with you though. I think that this movie kind of does an excellent job of Babe Ruth calling it shot. You know,
Yeah.
It's just kind of like, hey, we're shooting over the moon, and here's what's going to happen.
18 movies, corner pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just incredible. Near the end of the movie, it is now time for me to reveal my super pump for this movie.
I didn't even realize you hadn't said that yet because I just assumed it was Robert Downey Jr. because
It's not, but it actually has to do with
him.
him though. So my super pump for this movie is the final scene of the movie. It's when he reveals that he is Iron Man.
Oh,
Yeah.
So good.
And for me, that is for a number of reasons. One, it completely subverted my expectations. I was expecting, oh no, it's not me. I was expecting him to stick to Coulson's story or to come up with something else.
Dude, that is such a dumb cover, by the way.
I know, it's awful.
I get. I mean, that has comic book precedence. Like
Right.
that was Iron Man's secret identity for a long time.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to believe that Iron Man is Tony Stark's bodyguard.
Yeah, I know. But and I think that's part of the funny aspect, because even Tony Stark's like, bodyguard? Really?
Yeah.
He's like, just do it. But for me, that moment of him, and we talked about this a little bit before we started, sets up so much of who Tony Stark becomes for the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
Because in that moment, what he's saying is not just, yeah, I did it, I'm Iron Man. What he's saying is, know who I am, hold me accountable, look at me and say, Tony's in the suit. If Iron Man does something bad, it means Tony did something
great.
bad.
I actually hadn't put that together until you
really
talked about that. I quite like that read on that.
Because in that
particular scene.
moment, I feel like he has been so hurt and feels so stabbed in the back by Obadiah Stane, who was doing all of these horrible things without accountability.
shadows.
And he knows that he now possesses the greatest piece of technology ever made, and he has the potential to do so much bad with it, that I think that in that moment, that is his way of saying, I want you, the regular people, to be able to hold me accountable for my actions.
Yeah.
And I think that sets the stage for every single thing that happens to Tony for the rest of the MCU.
Yeah.
And because of that, man, this movie is just such a solid foundation and building block.
It is.
It's
And we talk about
unbelievable.
the consistent characterization
Yes.
throughout all the movies that Iron Man appears in.
Iron Man 1 Tony Stark is the same Tony Stark in every MCU
I mean,
movie.
he grows, he learns lessons.
No.
But it's definitively the same, the same character.
He both simultaneously shaves off and adds on some cynicism about some different things, but ultimately it's the same Tony learning and growing throughout the entire MCU.
Well, and I love that his desire for accountability in this carries us all the way through. This is
Civil
2008
War.
to 2016's Civil War, when that's the crux of his argument.
Well, even in Homecoming, you could argue that what he wants for Peter is to not be held accountable. Like he wants to be able to step in and say, I want to protect you from the strong arm of the law essentially coming down and saying, you can't do these things.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm not going to pretend that in that moment they knew that that's what they were setting up, but I do know that there's no way they haven't gone back to it and
impressive
used it as
follow through.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, even in Civil War, Vision says, since 2008, when you announced yourself as Iron Man, the level of opposition has increased. And Captain America says, so you think it's our fault? And he says, no, I just believe there's causations.
Yeah.
And so like from that moment, anytime you stand up in opposition, someone's going to rise to try and meet it. And that's what the MCU is built on, is these mega powers rise. And it's not like, oh, so there happens to be super villains now. No, opposition will always rise.
It's like there's some sort of force that seeks out a balance between a light and like a dark side.
It's actually, not to draw a parallel
reality
to
gem
another
from
one.
Thanos coming in, Star Wars.
Here we go for another parallel, but the end of Batman Begins, Jim Gordon says to Batman on the rooftop, what about escalation? And Batman says, what do you mean? He says, we carry pistols, they carry automatics. We carry automatics. They carry, snipers or whatever.
Bazookas, I think.
I think he does say bazookas, which is a hilarious thing to me. But that's kind of the idea. Well, guys, I guess there's no time like the present. So we should go ahead and rate. We should go ahead and rate this movie.
Let's do it.
Let's walk them through the scientific cinema scale.
You do it.
This is a scale that we have come up with our very own selves to rate movies. It's perfect. So what we say goes here.
Don't even argue.
Just know that.
In every way.
If you leave a comment that goes against our scale, we're gonna block.
Perfect in every way. So the best thing that we could ever say about a movie is own it, don't lend it, buy that poster. The next best thing we could ever say, buy it. You know what I mean? Just, right underneath that, next best thing, rent it. Don't buy it.
Nope.
Spend a couple bucks though, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, buddy.
Right underneath that, the next best thing we could say, stream it. Don't spend extra cash.
No.
Please don't spend extra cash.
No.
But if you're already paying for a subscription service and it's on there, hit it up. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Come on.
Right under that, we have a subcategory called forget it.
Ugh.
What that means is you would be better off if you just forgot that this movie even existed. Trust me. And then the worst thing that we could ever say about a movie. God hath forsaken us. So here we go, David.
Own it, don't lend it, buy that poster.
What?
Yep.
You're giving the first ever one?
First one.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you throwing it to me on this one. No, I've thought about it. I've given it a lot of thought. If there was a good Iron Man poster, I don't like the Iron Man poster.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I can throw a dump on that.
Sure.
Yeah.
But if there was a artistic Iron Man poster of Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, I would buy it. I mean, it had to be somewhat reasonably priced, and I am married, so there's no way it's going in my house where you can see it. But definitely in the closet somewhere. And I think for the movie that built not just a universe, but arguably one of the best universes that this world has ever seen in a small amount of time where that was a thing that was possible. But it's an incredible movie. It's hard to find things wrong with this movie.
Yeah,
and that's what I love about a good movie.
Yeah.
I don't even, it's not that I couldn't find anything bad, but I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't want to find anything bad.
I'm with
It
you.
was so good.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
So I'm never lending it.
I'm gonna be the second ever own it, don't lend it, buy that
Jeez.
poster. And this is something we're gonna run into in the MCU because I do own all of those movies. And I do own the special editions of all of those movies.
The question is, we have to constantly ask, can I borrow this?
The question,
And we'll
the
really
question
see where
for
your
me,
heart is.
as we're watching through these movies, is going to be: was it worth it, Doge? Do you really stand by what you did? And for this one, I absolutely stand by what I did. This is such a good movie. I think you said it. You said it perfectly. I want to invest my belief completely in this movie. I don't want to nitpick it and pull it apart.
Interesting. Well, I think for me, it's going to be the third own it, don't lend it, buy that poster.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
If you are watching or listening to this show,
This is the first.
and you send us an Iron Man poster, we'll put it on the table for the
We
next
legally
episode.
have to.
We
And
legally have
if
to.
we receive multiple, we'll just
have to stack
on
them.
top of each other.
What if that's a new thing we do on the show? Anytime we say, own it, don't lend it, buy that poster, if someone sends us or gives us an Iron Man poster, we have to put the poster on the table.
I just say anything anybody gives us for the show, we'll put on the table.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
care what it
very
is.
true.
Please
Doesn't matter
send
if
us
it's-
things,
Anyway,
guys.
you were talking about this very good movie that you liked so much.
Yeah, no, here's the thing. Honestly, I think as far as movie quality itself goes, I think it pales in comparison to some other late stage MCU movies. Not many, but a couple of them. And I don't know how many of them are going to get this rating from me, to be honest, later on. But just as far as the first building block of a series that I love so much, but also such a good building block. Yeah. And it's not without its flaws, kind of like you're saying, but I almost don't care what those flaws are because it is so good.
They're not big enough to distract from how good the movie is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And to be honest, I remember when this movie came out, or was announced rather, and being like, Iron Man?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
me too.
For the first, okay, that, whatever. And the fact that there are movies about Detective Comics related superheroes that I wanted to pick apart, and a movie about Iron Man so good that I don't even want to acknowledge what's wrong with it, even though I know those things might be there.
Yeah.
That just speaks so much to this movie. And so for me, it is honestly maybe the easiest rating I've given besides Suicide Squad.
I think that's a good point you brought up that we didn't really touch. The fact that Iron Man is leading the Avengers is weird if you read comics. That's like being like, oh, you're going to be so stoked for this Colossus movie. And you're like, Colossus? Like,
really?
It's not that I hate Colossus.
No, he's the leader of the X-Men.
Yeah.
You're like, he's going to be the highest paid actor in the franchise.
Okay.
Because Iron Man was in the Avengers.
Iron Man was B tier at best.
Yeah,
though.
Iron Man's he's a good superhero. Like you see Iron Man quite a bit.
Yeah.
But nowhere near the amount that you see him now because of this movie.
Yeah.
And I think that's a discussion that we may have at another time. I know that that's something that millions of people on the internet have discussed to death. How Marvel was essentially forced to start with their B tier heroes because their A tier heroes were locked up at other studios like Spider-Man and the X-Men.
But I think it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because the audience isn't coming in with a preconceived notion of this better happen. Because honestly, most people I don't even think knew what Iron Man's deal was.
Not at all.
Oh,
and to also be fair, maybe in some newer comics, but Robert Downey Jr. and that character isn't the Iron Man that I grew up with.
No,
that I know. I mean, he's more more like a Batman. Like, he hides behind the iron suit.
Tony Stark was Bruce Wayne for a long time.
Yeah.
So, again, and the MCU's done this multiple times, but they have changed the way that comics write these characters because of how good they are.
Which I'm always hesitant to accept, the film to comic inspiration. I prefer it to go the other way.
Yeah.
But in the case of Robert Downey Jr.'s characterization of Tony Stark, I believe that's absolutely
Nail
the
on
right
the head.
choice.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing about, and we'll talk about it so much more as we go on because it honestly is MCU's, I believe, greatest strength. Their casting is unbelievable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so very good.
And it's not just...
Except for poor Terrence Howard.
Yeah.
This is the only one he gets
And he
to
did a
be
great
on.
job.
Yeah.
He honestly did a fantastic job.
I did find myself wishing that it was Don Cheadle.
I did too.
And
I love Terrence Howard,
I did
dude.
have that moment of heartbreak for poor Terry Howard.
When he looked at
when he looks at the suit and goes, next time,
Next
baby.
time.
And he's
Never
never
did
did
another
another movie.
Nah.
And there's something,
I was mad when Don Cheadle came. I love Don Cheadle, but I wanted just to stay the same.
I like him
something-
better as Rhodey now. I do
sure.
love Terrence Howard as an actor, though.
Well, and it's same with Mark Ruffalo. as Hulk.
Yeah.
I think
forgot about Ed Norton.
he's better.
Yeah,
but
by a million, he's better.
But when they announced him, I was like, "Come on, keep the same cast."
No, I'm with you.
But now I'm like, Ed who?
Yeah. Speaking of which, we're done with our show and we're watching the Hulk next week. Right?
Yep, next
the
week will be
Incredible Hulk.
the
not
Incredible Hulk.
Don't
We're not
watch-
watching
don't watch the
Airband
Hulk.
yet.
Don't watch the Hulk.
Don't watch the Hulk. Watch the Incredible Hulk.
Someone emails like 800 dumps, and we're like, "Not that movie." the giant dogs that came and attacked him.
Oh my god,
Dude, I forgot about that movie until I accidentally said we were going to watch
Honestly,
it.
it has a pretty good cast. I mean, it has
it's got
It has a cast.
who's in it besides Eric Bana?
Nick Nolte is the
Oh
dad
my
and the main
gosh,
actor.
he totally is.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Stryker?
No, Nick Nolte's the
Nick
dad
Nolte.
in Warrior.
Yeah. Is he?
He's not Stryker.
Who is he?
What? No, Stryker is an X-Men.
Oh, yeah, wait, what? What are you talking about?
Who am I thinking of?
He's Bruce Banner's dad.
Who am I thinking of? The General.
You're thinking of.
You're thinking of Thunderbolt Ross in The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah, that's where
Which
we are.
is full circle. That's the movie we're
There
watching
we are.
next week.
Sorry
So
to get confusing.
if you want to watch it with us, we would absolutely love that.
Yes.
Not like actually with us.
Not
I don't
with
have
us.
that
No,
much room.
you're not invited. Our homes are not big
Yeah, I
enough.
don't have a big living room.
We say hoping that there are more people than would fit in my living room watching the show.
Maybe you all just let us know.
So email us.
Prefer to
at-
deny people rather than just like openly denying invisible people.
Email us at 2chunksandahunk@gmail.com.
Yes.
Hit us with your super pump and your super dump for 2008's The Incredible Hulk. We may talk about that next week. Iron Man came out in May. The Incredible Hulk came out in
June,
like
wasn't it?
July.
Yeah.
No, it was 6 weeks. It came out in June.
Yeah.
There was a
Wow.
6 week difference,
Which is insane.
Which is bizarre.
They were building this up, or
Well, they're same universe.
I know, but I'm saying so they had to have.
They were shooting
launched the
concurrently.
success.
Spoiler alert, but Tony's in.
Tony's in The Incredible Hulk.
I know.
Yeah.
At the
So
very
they
end.
must have been shooting concurrently. Anyway, that's another discussion for another podcast episode.
It sure is. Before we end the episode, we want to give a huge shout out to every single person who listened to us in 2017 and is now back to listen again in 2018.
Yeah.
You made
We
it.
love you. Oh, we love you.
Romantically.
Oh, yeah.
We want to take each and every one of you on a intimate and
Shrimp dinner.
sweet date.
Shrimp dinner.
I want to have
Shrimp dinner.
Shrimp dinner.
Tony Stark and Pepper Potts kind of dialogue. Us and you.
Consensual hand-holding.
We'll forget each and every one of you on a roof.
It'll be wonderful. Shrimp dinner.
Shrimp dinner.
Shrimp dinner.
Hashtag shrimp dinner. Make it happen, people. Hashtag,
Stephen Baker, we're talking to you.
hashtag chunky shrimp dinner.
Well, for 2 Chunks and a Hunk, I am Jordan Wonders.
I'm Doge.
And I'm David.
Shrimp dinner.
Shrimp dinner.
Shrimp
Hashtag
dinner.
shrimp dinner.
Shrimp
Hashtag
dinner.
chunky shrimp dinner.
Hashtag
2018.
official chunky. Shrimp dinner.
Shrimp.
Shrimp.
Debt left shrimp.
Well, the episode's over, but since you're still hanging out here, why don't we toss some information your way?
If you want to be the first to know when we drop new content, like us on Facebook at 2 Chunks and a Hunk. Subscribe to us on YouTube or subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you want a shout out on our next podcast, then hashtag official chunky.
That's CHUNKY.
That's true. That's true. Well, we're done here, but I guess if you want to stay, I mean, we can just
Yeah, keep hanging out.
What was your favorite part of that movie that we just saw? Did you like it?
I bet they did. I bet they did.